I am Eric Ladd with Outlaw Partners, bringing you the fifth installment of our Big Sky virtual town hall. This town hall is brought to you by Outlaw Partners, and I want to give special thanks to two of our sponsors who are helping making this happen, First Security Bank and the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce. They've both been fundamental in helping us underwrite this platform, and we are grateful for all that they've done in helping us bring this. So once again, I want to welcome you to the fifth installment of this town hall. This town hall was born during this recent pandemic, and it only feels appropriate that we're broadcasting live from Big Sky, the home and the town that Chet Huntley loved. Chet was an incredible NBC newscaster, and I can only imagine the critical role that he would have played during the past 8 weeks, helping share and network information, ask smart questions, and drive for results. Today, we are once again blessed to have a great panel to not only help address questions regarding the COVID pandemic, but also important community topics that we can't forget about as we branch out and we start our road to recovery. This past weekend, it was exciting to see so many people outside enjoying Mother Nature. And even though the fish were a little slow on the rise on the Madison, the sun felt great. And watching the elk graze on the open hillsides of the Madison Valley brought a nice sense of normalcy to an otherwise chaotic time. This week, we are very grateful to have Senator Daines join us, as well as the CEO of Northwestern Energy, Bob Rowe, the Vice President of Northwestern Energy, Bobbi Schroeppel. We're also grateful to have two amazing panelists from Big Sky to talk about local topics close to home, Kaley Burns and the famed Brian Stumph. Today, to help me conduct the town hall and address some of your questions, is Outlaw Partners Editor-in-Chief Joe O'Connor. Joe and his team publish over 11 different media publications out of our office here in Big Sky, including the Exploring Big Sky newspaper. This latest edition came out this past Friday, and I'd encourage you to pick it up. A lot of great stories in here. So let's get started. Format today will work like the last couple weeks. We'll spend about 15 minutes doing question and answer with each panelist, and then we'll open it up to some audience questions. If you've got questions, you're welcome to submit them on Facebook or through the Zoom platform, and we'll do our best to address your questions. If we don't get them to them today, we'll do our best over the next week to go back to them. So with that, I'd like to welcome our great senator representing the amazing state of Montana, Senator Daines. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you, Eric, and I agree about this amazing state. And thanks for doing this. For sharing this information for the people of Montana, for the Big Sky community. It's terrific. And I tell you, this is a lot of the home turf. As I think about my growing up years, I went to kindergarten through college in Bozeman. And in fact, we taught our 4 kids how to ski at Big Sky way back when. I was skiing at Big Sky in '73 when it first opened up. I was a Bridger Bowl rat, skiing a lot, loved it. Then I heard about this new place called Big Sky and had a chance to test it out. And that was pre-Challenger and pre-Tram days. But I'll tell you what, we got to love skiing up there and have so many great memories. In fact, my dad, way back in the 60s, when I was in grade school at Longfellow School, my dad was trying to sell paper products. It was like Dunder Mifflin back in those days, like The Office. And his boss in billing said, and my dad had Southwest Montana, and says, go up to that Low Mountain Guest Ranch and see if you can sell them some paper products. So Dad jumped in his vehicle and drove up 191, and back then it was a dirt road, of course, a Low Mountain Guest Ranch. That's all that was up there. He pulls into the parking lot, and there was a Cadillac there, and there was a guy driving and a guy riding shotgun. The guy driving dropped his cigarettes and came out of the car. Well, the guy driving was Chet Huntley, just as you mentioned there, Eric, and the guy riding shotgun was Arnold Palmer. And they were talking about maybe someday we'll build a golf course up here in the vision. So again, when I think about Big Sky, it's really very personal for me. A lot of memories of growing up. Tony Martell and Mark Gary and I were good buddies. I think Tony and Mark had lift ticket 1 and 2 when Big Sky opened up in December of '73, literally. And those were some of my Longfellow buddies. Anyway, enough of the old time stories, but it is an honor to be with you here this afternoon. Talk a bit about what's going on from a DC perspective. I'm back home in the Gallatin Valley. So I flew back to Montana on March 26th, the day after we passed that $2.2 trillion care package. I jumped on a plane, and Delta was already starting to cancel flights by then. I got a flight from Dulles to Salt Lake on Delta, and then I flew that Salt Lake to Bozeman flight, a beautiful 737-800 aircraft. There were 8 people on it. That was on March 26th. I got off, and of course, I know the Delta agents there. I do that flight every week back and forth to DC. And I said, there were only 8 people on that airplane. And she said, Steve, this morning on the morning outbound to Salt Lake, 737, there was 1 person on that plane. Wow. And that was a Delta non-rev passenger commuting to Salt Lake. So just kind of really hit home around what we're seeing going on in our state, in our country, just the devastating economic crisis that's hit us across the board, these layoffs, as we have been fighting this healthcare emergency in the coronavirus and the COVID-19 disease. So a couple of things, we've passed some important provisions that are helping people get through this very difficult time. Starting on the healthcare front, passing legislation that funds the PPE, that funds more testing, more ventilators, these critical pieces here in terms of addressing the immediate crisis, which is the healthcare, the epidemic. On the other side of this is the unemployment and the economic crisis. Looking at the latest numbers, over 80,000 Montanans have lost their jobs in the last 5 weeks. 80,000 Montanans. It's a mind-blowing number. You think about the national numbers are 22 million Americans have lost their jobs. To put that in perspective, those 4 kids I told you about, we taught how to ski up a big sky years ago. They're now all graduates, 3 of them from Montana State and on their own. But I talked to them the other night. I said, the all-time record unemployment number in our nation's history in terms of people losing their jobs in any one week was back in 1982. And it was 695,000 Americans lost their job in 1 week, 695,000. We saw 6.6 million Americans lose their jobs in 1 week over the course of this last 30 days. And so at 22 million unemployed nationally, over 80,000 unemployed right here in Montana, we've got this two-front battle. We've got the healthcare and the COVID-19 battle, and we've got this economic crisis. What our team has been doing virtually nonstop, and I'm just very proud of my team. Every day they're working these 12 to 14 hours to take care of Montanans. That's what we are here to do. Get information out. How does that unemployment insurance system work? What do we have to do to file for unemployment? What do we have to do to get these PPP loans and grants, these Paycheck Protection Program grants and loans? And by the way, that first tranche that we had of the PPP, of course, it ran out over the course of a few weeks. But here in Montana alone, we processed over $1.4 billion. That's with a B. And over 13,000 different small businesses received relief through the PPP program. Now, it ran out. So Congress replenished it last week. The president signed it on Friday. And this morning at 8:30 a.m. Mountain Time, we were back in business to start processing more of these PPP loans and grants. Now, we've been battling on behalf of Montanans and a lot of the guidelines to make sure they fit Montana's needs. I'll give an example, taverns. Taverns across Montana, many of them were excluded from the initial guidelines. And I tell you, I've been very happy to see the responses I'm getting from the leaders back in DC. Steve Mnuchin and I, we'll text back and forth. We'll call back and forth. I said, Steve, our tavern owners, many of them are excluded from the PPP because the gaming revenues as a percentage of total revenues exceed certain thresholds that SBA put in place. Well, the good news is we got 2 different rulings that expanded that. So now all taverns across Montana, as an example, there's about 2,400 of them. They employ over 30,000 Montanans, by the way, are now eligible for PPP. On seasonal employees, and this would be very relevant for what's going on at Big Sky. We literally just got this news. This came about 2 hours ago, is they changed the way to calculate average monthly payroll by incorporating the peak season in Montana, at least for the summertime now. Of course, wintertime's a different issue, but coming into the summer months, they now can use the May 1 of 19 to September 15th of 19 to look back, take their top 12-week period. So I think if you're in Montana, it's going to be June 15th to September 15th, most likely. We now can take that peak number versus taking an average number over the year. That's going to help our seasonal employees here and seasonal businesses. I'm thinking about those in the guiding business, anybody who's got a summertime operation. As you know, it's a short summer in Montana, and we're really pleased to get that win here for seasonal employees just today. I was working with Lisa Murkowski and Dan Sullivan in Alaska. You think Montana's summers are short, you look at Alaska, they've got short seasons as well, and we got some good relief there. Yeah. Lastly, and then I'll open it up here for questions. Also working hard on getting the vaccines and the drugs, the therapeutics needed to make sure that we are safe coming into the summer and the fall. So there's really a two-prong attack as it relates to ensuring that we are safe coming into the fall. One is testing. We've got to have much more testing. We got to stop thinking about hundreds of tests and thousands of tests and start thinking about millions of tests. And part of that package we just passed in Congress on Friday, the president signed it. It included $16 million for Montana alone, only for testing. So we've got to translate that in terms of number of tests and so forth, but we've got to be thinking again in terms of hundreds of thousands and millions of tests. It's going to be a very important part of getting people comfortable and feeling safe and secure, especially for our seniors as they think about re-engaging this economy. On the drugs and therapeutics and vaccine side, I was able to get $10 billion, that's with a B, in that $2.2 trillion package. What that does is it's focused on the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Group. That they focus on accelerating these vaccines and these drugs and these therapeutics to the market. We think we're going to shave 4 to 6 months off of the timeline because of that. I was on the phone last night with Steve Hahn. It's Dr. Steve Hahn. He's the head of the FDA. Steve and I have been going back and forth. Sometimes you'll see him appear with Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci. He's the bald guy, he'll say. He was an MD Anderson oncology radiology doc that came to DC to run the FDA. Great guy, very familiar with Montana, loves the outdoors, and we're working together to get the best and brightest in government, our scientists with the best and brightest on the private sector side to come together here to accelerate getting these important vaccines. And lastly, and then I'll open up for whatever comments or questions. I was at the University of Montana just last Thursday. It's the first time I got out of Bozeman probably in a month. We jumped in my pickup. We drove to Missoula, where my dad went to school. True confession, my dad's a Grizzly. I'm a Bobcat. But we visited the University of Montana with Seth Bodner, their president, and the amazing work going on there on finding a vaccine for COVID-19. It's not getting a lot of press yet, but I'll tell you what, if you look at the history of Montana, the Rocky Mountain labs there in the Bitterroot, that goes back to the spotted fever from the ticks way, way back when they came out to Montana to figure out what was going on. A lot of the scientists stayed here because I think they liked to have a fly rod in their hand. And then GlaxoSmithKline put a manufacturing plant right down there in Hamilton, Montana. That's grown to be a world-class facility. They do the Ebola research. They've done some amazing things. Well, anyway, those scientists came up and joined the University of Montana faculty. They're doing some great work on COVID-19 vaccines. And wouldn't it be exciting if Montana was really a key part of the breakthrough here to get a vaccine to keep us all safe going forward. So, Eric, there's so much to talk about. I'm going to be quiet, and I'll just say we are here to help. Daines.senate.gov is our website. Please let us know what we can do to help navigate through some of these bureaucracies and answer any questions that I can, Eric. But again, thanks for doing this. It's an honor to be with you here this evening.
Well, thank you. And thank you for fighting for small businesses in rural areas. I know they're near and dear to your heart, and that means a lot. And also thank you for your work on the FDA front. I mean, I think that's a huge part. First question I'd have for you, Senator, is being a small business owner, and a lot of my businesses that are Outlaw clients, we've got about 120 small businesses in Southwest Montana that are clients of Outlaws. One of the common things we hear for people that did get money from the PPP is they're very grateful for it. First off, it was amazing that those checks showed up. I still am astonished that it happened as fast as it did. But it kind of feels like it's set up a little bit of a false bottom, because what happens after 8 weeks? I mean, no, there's no crystal ball, but it's bringing payrolls back up. But then what?
Yeah. Well, first of all, as you mentioned, there's this back end that there's some uncertainty. And when the legislation was crafted, there was a snapshot in time taking back in March in terms of trying to predict what's going to happen here going out in the next 8 to 12 weeks. And one thing we pushed Steve Mnuchin on was, you need to move at the speed of business, not the speed of government. We need to get this out in the hands of the people quickly. As I told Steve, I said, Steve, this is not a stimulus package. Stimulus implies you're stimulating a strong business. Right. I said, this is hardly even a rescue package. Rescue implies you've got somebody living. This is a recovery package. I said, it's not a matter of throwing a life raft out to business right now. I literally have businesses that have drowned or 100 feet at the bottom of the lake. We got to bring them up and start administering CPR. And that was the case of many small businesses that already made door shuttering decisions and layoff decisions. And so on this back end that you talked about, Eric, we have to go back to Treasury and look for what makes sense in terms of intent. What we're trying to do here is ensure that we've got payroll and that we've got people coming back on the payroll by a certain date. But the reality is, I think it's going to take longer, especially I think some of our restaurant owners and others, to get this thing ramped up. I think it's going to be a little slower uptake than probably was originally anticipated. So that is something we're going to continue to work with Secretary Mnuchin and SBA on that back end. It's not solved yet, but I can tell you many of us are vocal in that regard on the small business side, and more to come on that.
Okay, well, thank you for that, and I'm glad that's being recognized, because you as a small business owner, that money, you're spending it right now, but you're already thinking about what's going to happen, and you don't want to have to go through layoffs and everything again.
Oh, and you want that to be a grant, not a loan, right? I mean, that's the goal here for these small businesses, to meet that criteria, because if they meet that criteria, then that's a grant. There won't be a payback on it, and that's what we want to get people to. We're going to keep working on that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
On the FDA front, and it's been really, honestly, I would use the word inspiring to see how you have all been able to try to cut through some of that red tape and streamline not only drugs for COVID, but potentially stuff for maybe other illnesses out there that need attention. And I guess, what's another learning point that you've had in this process about maybe being able to streamline life-saving drugs? And I'll give an example in a little pitch. We have a dear friend, Eric Stevens, who's suffering from ALS, horrible disease out there. People in Big Sky, it's hit us a couple times. Right. And there's a drug that's been in the FDA for years. Is there potential that this might open up other opportunities for things to speed up for other life-saving drugs? Yeah,
no, it's a great question, Eric. And back, it's been probably about a year ago, we passed a bill and the president signed it called Right to Try. The idea of right to try, and I'll tell you, one of the heart-wrenching parts of the job I get to do on behalf of the American people and behalf of Montanans is when you meet the different advocacy groups and you get to learn about every one of these horrible diseases. Every year we get the pancreatic cancer folks come back, the ALS folks come back, muscular dystrophy, and you oftentimes are meeting Montanans who are afflicted with these horrible, horrible diseases. And it's one of the reasons, and I'm a fiscal conservative trying to bring some sanity to Washington on spending versus revenues. But one area I am all in is to invest in the National Institute of Health, the research to solve the problems and to solve these diseases. And as relates to the right to try, that is a way to streamline getting these drugs in the hands of, frankly, desperate families. They're looking for hope. A stage 4 cancer patient, an ALS patient. I mean, I've had just some tear-filled conversations with families that talk about where they're at and saying, all we want to do is be able to try it. And that was called Right to Try. It passed with good bipartisan support. So that was a positive step, and that was really streamlining the FDA and allowing a little more flexibility when you're kind of out of options. By the way, Dr. Steve Hahn, the FDA commissioner, I mean, he's a oncology radiologist at MD Anderson in Houston, one of the great cancer centers. So he gets all that. Now, as it relates to COVID-19, similarly, we're streamlining that. I've already gone to bat for a Montana group. I'm going to call them EUA, Emergency Use Authorization, to get the FDA to go a little faster here. And it's an all hands on deck event. It's like the Manhattan Project right now. There's a race, or maybe it's a better way to say it, it's a race to put somebody on the moon. It's an all hands on deck moment for us to cut through the red tape, but you can't compromise efficacy and safety. You can't. But you can run them in parallel paths. And that's what we're doing at the moment. You can start manufacturing up earlier, waiting for the test results to come in. If the test results are positive, we're well down our way on the supply chain and producing. That way we can get to market in 4 to 6 months sooner. And that's kind of, we're putting a lot of emphasis.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for that. And,
Mm-hmm.
Switching gears and talking football, I as you said, Cat Grizz, there's this wonderful rivalry that we all love. When do you think we'll be back to, as a society, being back in public settings like that, in gatherings of, concerts or amazing football games or rodeos?
I didn't know Missoula still had a football team, Eric. I'm glad to hear they're going to come back and try again this year. We'll see. That was a great game, by the way. But I was nearly born in Missoula. My mom was pregnant with me working at the Missoula Merc, putting my dad through school once upon a time back in 1962. So my dad's a diehard Grizz. In fact, I've got a Grizz mask for him I'm going to give him. My dad's 81, and they're being very, very careful, as they should. But that's a really good question. I just don't know. It's a really good question. I was having that conversation with somebody else today. Will the baseball season maybe be a halftime season, coming after after like the All-Star break for MLB? I don't think anybody knows at the moment. I think they're going to let data drive these decisions. Thankfully, our Montana numbers are coming down well. The president has got a plan on reopening the economy nationally. But we've got to do this. We got to safely reopen it, make sure we take care of our seniors as we're doing this. So I wish I had a good answer for you. I hope we're playing football well before the Cat Grizz game, which is always the last game of the season.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, one last question, and I'll let Joe bring in a couple that from the audience, Senator. The term and that I've heard a lot, and once again, looking for these good news that could come out of this pandemic, is a lot of people are saying, I hope it doesn't go back to the way it used to be. In a way that there's been this blessing of seeing life slow down a little bit, traffic go away, trailheads clear out, and all of a sudden it's like the whole world has just calmed down a little bit. As a leader of our country and our state, what type of or some takeaways that you don't think might be sticky points moving forward and as a society on ways to live a little more sustainably or treat ourselves and the planet or our neighbors a little better?
Yeah, well, I think we've all had more time at home. Talk about a staycation. It's put the stay back in staycation, hasn't it? I mean,
yes, absolutely. It's
really been interesting. Normally I'm going back and forth each week to DC. I spend most of my weekends here in Montana. I commute back on Delta every Monday morning out of Bozeman Airport. It's my normal routine. But there was something, if there's a silver lining on this dark COVID-19 cloud, I got to say, there was something about waking up every morning next to my sweet wife, Cindy, getting my coffee, seeing my 3 dogs, and doing work here through these virtual events, and the kids are doing distance learning at the moment. And I think it is calling into question, the hustle and bustle we have every day of having to jump in the car and go back and forth to work. There's more opportunity, I think, perhaps to work at home. This has been a very, very painful lesson to learn, though. I wouldn't want to have to repeat this in any way. But I think what's stuck with me is how Montana's come together as well. On Thursday, we saw that great work being done on the vaccine at the University of Montana. Cindy and I also went to the Hellgate Elementary School. So that's a campus of 1,500 students, K through 8. They're shut down, of course. They're packing lunches every day. The staff are. They're for a breakfast and for a lunch, because those are students. Many of their students rely on the nutrition supplement that actually through a federal government program that I had to get a waiver for to allow them to keep delivering those lunches to the students to their door. So the school bus drivers drive the routes, and they literally, it's like DoorDash. They literally are delivering the lunches and breakfast to the students' doors, and the students wave at them when they come up. It's pretty touching. They're yearning to get back to see their friends. But if there's something we've also learned is how Montanans do come together, the sense of community, even though we're distant in some ways. I've sensed too a way we've come together in kind of this strange way. And lastly, just the way I do my job. I thought, well, boy, I'm going to be back in Montana. How can I continue to meet with people I always do back in DC? We have Montanans come back to DC all the time. And we have, my day in DC is spent mostly meeting with Montanans. And I thought, how can I keep that cadence going? Well, here's what I found out, is that when I'm back in DC, an advocacy group might send 2 or 3 people back for that meeting because it's expensive airfare, expensive for meals, expensive for hotels. It's an expensive trip and it's time consuming. We're doing those same meetings now back in Montana with Montana groups. And now instead of having 3 or 4 people face-to-face in DC, it's 50 people face-to-face in Montana via Zoom. And we're finding out we're actually maybe more engaged and more face-to-face time, if you will, using technology. So I think it's an important part of going forward in Montana. I was in the software business for 12 years in Montana, building a cloud computing company. And what we found is that technology removed geography as a constraint. I mean, growing up like I did in the 60s and 70s in Bozeman, we were a long ways from anywhere. Bozeman was not the cool town back then, by the way. When Brad Pitt came and put a flyer on his hand, we started to get cool in the mid-90s. But back in the 60s and 70s, I had a Browning Siloflex rod, an automatic reel, and a wicker creel. It's like a river runs through it. But fly fishing wasn't that cool back then. I thought it was cool. My grandpa, my dad, and I did. But the point is, we were a long ways from anywhere, and that made Montana pretty special. But it was because of technology and this connectivity. Now people can live here and also play on the weekends here. And we're demonstrating that, I think, with what's going on at the moment, is that you really can use technology to stay connected. So anyway, that's just a few thoughts, Eric. And
Wonderful.
I wouldn't want to repeat this in any way, But there's a few silver linings on this dark cloud.
Well, you have to look for them somewhere. But
Yep.
thank you for that. And I didn't know you were Brad Pitt's double in River Runs Through It.
I was not Brad Pitt's double.
All right, Joe, is there a couple questions we can do?
Yeah, absolutely. Senator Daines, great to see you again, and welcome. Thank you for coming on the show. You mentioned that 80,000 Montanans have filed for unemployment at this stage. And it's early days yet, but has the staged reopening of businesses and the economy been a successful process so far? And what is your position on balancing the re-engagement of the economy with keeping Montanans healthy and safe?
Yeah, I think that is the question, isn't it? About how you strike that balance. And there's criteria laid out where you want to see consecutive declines in the COVID-19 positive cases, which we're seeing. But one of the areas that we've got to start opening up as we think about our businesses is actually the business of healthcare. Give you an example. I just checked the numbers here this morning. We have 1,600 plus open hospital beds empty across Montana. Now, you take the Kalispell Hospital as an example. I was on the phone with some of their leaders here 2 weeks ago. They furloughed 600 doctors, nurses, medical technicians, clerical staff, 600 at the Kalispell Hospital. Why? Because they have a 300-bed hospital, 200 beds are empty, and they had one COVID-19 patient. So what we were doing was we were working to make sure we had enough capacity in our hospitals. That was one of the very important criteria in terms of trying to bend this curve, to flatten the curve, so we didn't overwhelm the medical staff. And thankfully, here in Montana, we were not New York. And that's why I think it's really important that I don't want to see a top-down driven approach from the federal government. They can give some guidelines. I want the states to make that decision, even drive that down further to the county level. About half of our counties in Montana did not have a single COVID-19 known positive test result. So what goes on in Carter County, in some of the counties and places where they're a long ways from anywhere, not even the surrounding county having a COVID-19, perhaps there's a different approach than some of these hotter places that we've seen like in Gallatin County.
Sure.
But I think we've got to look at right now our hospitals. Thankfully, we've got plenty of capacity, and that's a good news story for us. And our hospitals financially are facing some very, very challenging times. That's why we just passed a $100 billion relief package here for our hospitals. But here's the biggest hardship is we have Montanans who want elective procedures that haven't been able to get them now for the last 6 weeks. And so you've got people who need to see a doctor, and that's another place I think we can start opening up again. In our hospitals, I think they'll exactly strike that right balance. Safety first, but also we need to start taking care of people now with these empty beds that we have.
Sure. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. I've talked to a couple different businesses that are concerned that they're having employees go on unemployment and not coming back to work because of the high level of pay that they're getting through unemployment. Any comments on that or?
Yeah. Well, the federal component on the unemployment was pretty generous. Here's a way to think about it in Montana. Our average wage, median wage in Montana is $43,000, $44,000 a year. The way the state unemployment system works is they take a percentage around 53, 54% of your wage, and that becomes your state unemployment benefit. So if you take that median Montana wage, break it down by week, it's about, I'm using round math here, round numbers, about $450 a week. The federal government added $600 a week on top of that. So it's depending on where your wage level is at, you can create a situation where you actually can make more money being on unemployment insurance than you can staying on the payroll. And that has created a problem for some of our employers and with employees. Now, if you're offered the job back, the way that the laws work on that is you can't keep taking unemployment if you have your job to go back to. Sure. And so I think we just have to strike that right balance. And we've got to get the employers, when they're ready to start opening up again, we want them to go back on the payroll because that's the goal here. The unemployment benefit was there to be a benefit to help. By no fault of their own, they lost their jobs. So nobody's to blame. And there's no small business owner to blame. There's no employee to blame. The fact is we had this black swan event that came in and just cold cocked us, right? Just stopped this economy just about out of the blue. Everything was looking good in January. Everything was looking good in February. Now look where we're at.
Yeah.
we're going to get through this, but I think that's the balance on it. And it's time to start moving folks as they start opening up these businesses, moving them from unemployment back to these small businesses.
Sure, absolutely. And we've got one last one from the audience here, from a local business. Since Big Sky is 100% a tourist-driven economy, what's being done at the national level to get interstate travel going again? And to follow up, is testing air travelers being considered so their destinations will welcome them?
Yeah. Well, there's not a lot of air travelers out there right now. If you've been
Right.
up to Bozeman Airport lately, we took some lunches. We bought lunch and took them up to the National Guard, who were up there taking temperatures of inbound passengers. And I mean, my eyes, I welled up with tears just looking at that Bozeman Airport, it's usually one of the most vibrant airports in the country in terms of per capita. We were the busiest airport in Montana. Again, when I was a kid, the Bozeman Airport was a sleepy little stagecoach place. Now it's the busiest airport in Montana. It's vibrant. That parking lot was empty. And they said they were seeing like 60 or 70 people a day in total coming through the exit, talking to the National Guard. Of course, now they're taking temperatures of everybody coming in. But that's going to be also a state decision, because right now there's still a quarantine policy in place. If you come into the state, you're quarantined for 14 days. You can't leave your hotel room. You can't keep your home. You can't leave your home. You're quarantined for 14 days. So I think we have to start looking at when is the right point to start loosening that up, because of course, you think about Montana, we're very dependent on those tourism dollars and that travel. But I think that's going to be decisions to be up to the state of Montana. When is the right time to loosen that up? Sure. And I know they're watching the data very carefully. I know one of the concerns, of course, is not loosening up too quickly. I know our gateway communities. I was chatting with members, in Gardner and West Yellowstone, a place like Cook City. They were concerned about Yellowstone National Park having international visitors or from around the country coming in and possibly creating a hot spot there. And that would kill the summer season if they had a hot spot there during the kind of the shoulder, this April, May timeframe. And so that's why they were supportive of Secretary Bernhardt. And I talked to David Bernhardt. I chair the National Park Subcommittee in the U.S. Senate, by the way. It's one of my favorite committees I get to chair. And it's very personal to me as we're looking at what do we do about our national parks. And I know David's going to yield to the will of the local communities. He will, because those local communities are balancing the risk of possible COVID-19 cases, as well as the risk to their balance sheet, liquidity, as well as insolvency, which they're all facing right now. So it's a tough call, but I'm hopeful and optimistic as we turn the corner here in the next month or so. Let's hope we're starting to see our parks open up again, starting to see people come into Montana, but we got to be looking at the data.
Got it. Well, thank you, Senator, very much. I appreciate your time. And
yeah,
Eric,
thank you. It's great being with you all.
Thank you, Senator. And I have to give a shout out. You probably don't get enough thank yous. And we did get a listener that just sent a thank you in. They wanted to thank you for your leadership in co-sponsoring the Great American Outdoors Act. So she's a very reputable, local here, and said thank you for your work there.
Well, thanks. And just the commercial for that, so everybody knows what that is. That does two things. It addresses the backlog maintenance in our national parks, which is about $12 billion. Get in there and catch up. Our national parks are fraying at the edges in so many places. So that's one thing. But the other part is it fully funds at $900 million a year the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Makes it mandatory funding, fully funds it, $900 million a year for forever on that. And that's great news. And I hope we can get that passed here soon. The President Trump has says he'll sign it. He says, get it on my desk, I'll sign it. So we got that part sealed with him. Now he's got to get it through Congress. I think we got good bipartisan support. So anyway, thank you.
No, thank you for your work there. And thank you for your time. Very generous and appreciate it, and hope to see you at that football game this fall.
There's only one team to root for.
All righty.
I just offended all the Grizzlies. I know that, but anyway, thank you.
Well, that's good. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Shifting gears to another anchor of our community and our state and our region. We have two great representatives from the company Northwestern Energy joining us, including the CEO, Bob Rowe, and the Vice President, Bobbi Schroeppel. Thank you for joining us today. I'll start off with a question for Bob. Bob, can you just help our listeners, maybe understand the size and scope of your company? I'm sure that we could spend an hour talking about all the things you do, but just so people understand the leadership, position that you're in with your team.
Sure. Well, first, thank you very much for doing this. It was great to hear what Senator Daines had to say and what he's doing. You mentioned Chet Huntley at the start. I got to tell a quick Chet Huntley story too. My wife and I were cleaning out boxes of papers and photographs yesterday, and I ran across my dad's Whitehall High School yearbook, and he was just a couple of years ahead of Chet Huntley in high school. He has some great stories from that period. So it is interesting to think what Chet Huntley would be doing and thinking and saying if he were watching this right now. Yeah, Northwestern is actually, depending on what measurement you look at, by just geography, it is one of the largest electric and gas companies in the United States. If, on the other hand, you look at it as an enterprise from market capitalization, we're one of the very smallest. We serve parts of Nebraska with natural gas, South Dakota with electricity and natural gas, Montana with electricity and natural gas, and then Senator Daines said Yellowstone Park's a very special place, and we're privileged to serve Yellowstone Park as well. In Montana, we're responsible for actually now over $5 billion of critical infrastructure. And when I think about our company's role, it is a provider of the basic infrastructure, the arteries, the veins, both on the electric side and the natural gas side. So provider of critical infrastructure, but also and a steward of critical infrastructure and a provider of essential service. The third area that means a whole bunch to me is the opportunity we have to be partners to our customers and to our communities. That includes communities, certainly Big Sky, but all across Montana. So as we've approached the COVID-19 situation, that has really all been top of mind for Bobbi, for myself, for all the folks we work with.
Wonderful. Wow, it's amazing stats. I learn something every time I read up or hear something about your company, but that's fascinating. Can you, what's been some of the more memorable adjustments that you've had to make the last 8 weeks?
Yeah, and let me say just a couple of things about how we plan for events like this. And if it's okay, I'm going to toss the hot potato to Bobbi. We have business continuity plans. We do tabletop exercises. We do live exercises. We do exercises on a regular basis, for example, around dam safety for the Hebgen, the Madison dams, other facilities we own. And those turned out to be very, very valuable. We stood up our incident command structure in response to the virus just about 10 years ago. What's been different in this situation is the geographic scope. It's touched every community that we serve. It's touched the whole globe. The duration, we're well now into the second month, although we've been looking at it, anticipating it for longer than that. And then the complexity. If you think about all the different aspects of our lives that it's touched. We do what we call our enterprise risk management process. And virtually every one of the factors on that list has in some way been affected by COVID. So we now, 6 weeks ago, formally stood up our incident command structure. Some basic steps involved moving as many people as we could to remote locations so that the other people could work in facilities. And then our crews, who are responsible for building and maintaining critical infrastructure, have moved into a pod structure. We now have our customer service reps helping our customers from home. So all that's worked actually surprisingly well. We've been incredibly fortunate not to have any employees get ill. We've had a couple of situations where we had to go in and sterilize facilities. And then as the process became more stable for us, we were able to reach out and, for example, our community affairs leaders meet every day. And what they're talking about is how can we help the communities that we serve. So if it's okay, I'd like to, as I said, toss the hot potato over to Bobbi, and she can talk a little bit more about what she's so busy doing.
Great.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. Thanks for having us on the show. It's a great honor. And I really appreciated Senator Daines' comments. They were just exactly in line with our thinking. So Bob had mentioned back in 2009, we actually did do quite a bit of pandemic planning around what was the H1N1 or swine flu virus, and we never really had to use it. But fortunately, we had preserved it and we were able to pull it forward, and it's been remarkably relevant even a decade later. But core to our strategy has been what people are referring to as social distancing. Bob talked about this, but it's really taking every employee that can work from home and moving them home. On any given day, we can have as much as 900 of our roughly 1,530 employees across our entire service territory and all of our states that we serve working from home. So that's actually well over 50%. These employees are actually not allowed to enter a facility. If they do need to get something, they have to go through a formal request process. We've classified every employee, and they're either classified as mission essential, critical, necessary, or as needed. And that classification can change as time goes on, but there's a formal process that you have to go through to request a change. For those who cannot work from home, Bob mentioned our aggressive pod strategy. This would include critical mission essential employees, such as control room operators. We operate the grid in Montana, not only for Montana, but all of the co-ops and MDU as well. That's the transmission system. Generation plant operators, our linemen and our gasmen. One of the things we are a little fortunate on is we have 136,000 square mile service territory. It's one of the biggest in the entire country. So we're somewhat socially distanced on the linemen and gasmen side because of that. But obviously in Bozeman, for example, we've taken extra precautions. These folks are working in distinct groups. They don't interact with other pods. They stagger their start times. We're doing remote pickup and drop-offs of materials so that they can get their critical work done in the field. But so far we are performing mostly our normal maintenance and capital work. In fact, we feel it's more important today than ever that we continue to harden and make the grid resilient, stay on track with tree trimming, et cetera, because if we were to have a major event, it's kind of a common knowledge that there's probably not going to be the type of mutual assistance that we've seen in the past for a while, where other utilities are able to send in sometimes hundreds, if not thousands of workers in, depending on the size of the event. You know, they stay in hotels and they help you put the grid back together. And we're all planning as an industry that we're not going to have that available to us in any large scope for maybe the next 18 to 24 months. We do have a sequester in place plan that would be for just a small number of individuals, like our control room operators. We really hope we never have to use that. Right now, we're feeling good that we're not going to have to. And hopefully if we have a second wave of this, our states will continue to do really well, as we've seen in Montana, and control the virus. I wanted to talk a little bit about third parties, because I know we have some substation work and transmission work going on up at Big Sky that's really important for the reliability up there. But we are ensuring that all of our contractors and third parties are following the same COVID-19 protocols that we are. If you're interested as a customer, or if you're not a customer, you can go to our external website. We have a special COVID-19 page that we keep updated on a daily basis. And then Bob mentioned too, I didn't think this was going to be possible, but in a matter of a couple of weeks, we managed to move 100 customer service representatives from working in 2 contact centers, one in Butte, Montana, and one in Huron, South Dakota, to working from home, and it's going incredibly well.
Oh, that's great. Well, congratulations on that pivot. I'm sure that took some ingenuity. I think one of the things that's impressed me living in Montana, over the last 20 years, is seeing your company's commitment to communities. And I know, and it's kind of a loaded question, but maybe I don't know who to throw this to. Some of your community programs that have evolved because of the COVID situation, in ways that you're not only supporting local communities, but giving back during this time.
Yeah, and I'll start and again hand it off to Bobbi, because she's very, very deep in all of this. That's one of the things I love about Northwestern. I get to live in Montana, a state I care about, and I've come to love South Dakota and Nebraska as well. Get to do important work and get to do it with great people. So the community engagement that we have is critical. And the basic thing is, again, infrastructure and service. If we're not doing our job, then the heroes in healthcare, or the folks who are keeping the grocery stores open, nobody can do their job. So that is basic. And that's why you see our employees out doing their job safely. In addition to that, though, we've always had a very strong community commitment. In fact, something I would love to have folks go take a look at. Our annual community report is hot off the virtual presses this week, and the address for it is just go to northwesternenergy.com/2020 community report. Literally, it is coming out this week. And that tells the story of all the things we do at the community level. It's a couple $2 million around the service territory, sponsorships and charitable activity. More than that, it's the engagement of our employees and all kinds of things, working at community kitchens, doing stream bed projects, on and on and on. That continues, but on top of that base, we made the early decision to not terminate anyone. We're going into the end of the heating moratorium. Instead, Bobbi's got her folks calling up customers, trying to work with them and just make sure everybody has access to the resources that might be there. We also then set aside an additional $300,000 to work with our customers, residential, small business, try to make the small business support available before Congress could act. And actually, I appreciated the senator's comment about speed of business as opposed to speed of government. We tried to do that. Now what we're really looking for is ways to continue supporting the groups we've always worked with, continue to work with the local business community, particularly small businesses, and support them as really community by community. They come up with community appropriate strategies for reopening. It's good to see businesses in Big Sky looking at that as well. Bobbi, hot potato off to you.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, Bob did a great job covering a lot of the core stuff. Just a few things I would mention. Just to reiterate, we do on an annual basis give away about $2 million, and I want to just make the point that this is shareholder funds. These are not funds that are in customer rates. In addition to that, we did in our first wave give away another $300,000 that went to various programs, including some in Montana and South Dakota, some small business grants. And just like Senator Daines talked about, the money was gone very, very quickly, but we were thrilled to do it, and it was very heartwarming to work with customers. We're going to be in a mode for probably another year or so with more flexible and extended payment arrangements. We're looking at some options where we can have carrots instead of a stick, so that if customers sign up for like a 12-month payment arrangement, if they meet that payment arrangement on a monthly basis, we may be able to say, look, we might be able to give some, even some small credits back on the bill, because it costs money to roll a truck and disconnect somebody, and we never want to disconnect anybody. That is never our goal. There's been additional federal money allocated to low-income energy assistance. In addition to that, we are working at the local and state level to take a look at what's called the Universal Systems Benefits Fund, and that is money that we collect on the bill every month, and possibly allocating on a temporary basis even some additional money to low-income energy assistance on both the gas and electric side. I mentioned the small business, we've developed a special online resource for small businesses for COVID-19. We are conducting a business recovery survey in partnership with some other organizations. We did make some changes. It used to be not as easy to sign up for some self-service options such as budget billing, auto pay, and electronic billing. We are now letting our customer service representatives sign people up for that while they're on the phone. We're even allowing people, under certain instances, to roll an existing balance into budget billing. Those are things that we had not done in the past. You had to be current. We're trying to figure out ways to keep our energy efficiency programs going, since we can't offer on-site free weatherization on audits, but we're looking at if we can do some of that stuff virtually. We have some company match programs where employees are donating, and they've been donated well over, I think, $20,000, and we've been matching that to organizations such as Energy Share. And then we've expanded our Gift of Energy program. So if there are folks out there, who do have, aren't as in dire straits right now, and they want to help either just somebody in general, or they want to help somebody specifically, they can give us a call and we can do a Gift of Energy.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot of programs.
Just one more comment to highlight the good work that the local community has been doing. And Senator Daines said this a bit differently, but I've been thinking about it in terms of physical distancing coupled with social solidarity. And certainly in Montana or the part of the country that we serve, that's so possible. Many of you know Heather Bellamy, for example, our community leader in Bozeman and Big Sky, the work that she's doing, Big Sky in particular, with the community relief fund that's been stood up and how people are supporting that. That's just extraordinary. And that, along with all the other wonderful reasons we live in Montana, that's why we're here. And we're really proud to be part of that. In Big Sky, it's just a very resilient, united community. Bobbi mentioned we're paying attention to the infrastructure that serves Big Sky. You're paying attention to other parts of the infrastructure. And I'm just so impressed by the way the Big Sky community does pull together to get things done and get the right things done.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And like I said, you guys have played a big role in that, and Heather does great work. One last question for you, Bob. You know, I always love asking CEOs, especially someone who's leading a company as big as you are, is during these times, what's something that keeps you up at night? And I think a second part of that question is what's something that you're grateful for?
Boy, I am grateful for the people I work with. That is the absolute truth. And that's the senior team, Bobbi and the other folks that we spend every day online meeting with, and we're all good friends and a good team. And it's true for the folks in the field, the folks who move to working from home. I couldn't be happier about that. The things we worry about, number one, employee safety. And we've now gone well over 200 days without a lost time incident, even as we've asked people to work in very, very different ways. Number two, community, customer safety, and being there to get the job done for our customers. And again, I'm really pleased that we've been able to do that even with all of the disruption that we're suffering.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. And as I'm watching the questions come in, what I think has just become obvious to me is first off, I'm grateful for your time, but there's a lot of people wanting to, I think, dive into bigger topics like sustainability and some of the growth initiatives of your business. So I think I've been inspired that maybe if you'd be willing to come back in a couple weeks or months, we could do a whole episode, I think, just talking to your company and how those arteries are going to continue to evolve in our region and for our town. So if you're up for that, maybe we'll invite
Sure.
you.
Well, the one thing I would say on the sustainability front, we kicked off a community sustainability working group with a meeting at Big Sky in December. And we have a staff, we created an internal position, a sustainability director. He's working on that full time. He reports up to Bobbi. Big Sky is an active participant in that group, as is Bozeman and Helena and Missoula. And that's an important part of where we're going as a company. So I'd love to spend more time talking about that.
Great. Well, that's great to hear. And I will tell you that being here, and I know you both spend time here in Big Sky and love to have you up here as neighbors, but it's just the word sustainability is really rising to the surface through this COVID pandemic. A lot of people, not only on life, but in the way they live and the way they treat the earth, all that word seems to become a kind of a blanket. So having your support in that would be wonderful. So with that, if there's anything other closing words from you, I'll thank you for your time, and we'll shift it back locally here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bobbi.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. With each edition of the Big Sky Town Hall, we always love to have a health expert join us. So the next up, we're going to shift gears and have Kaley Burns from Big Sky Natural Health talk to us a little bit about her business, how she's kind of adjusted from a small business perspective, but also on some alternative methods of making sure we all stay healthy and happy. Kaley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and putting this on. Feeling very fortunate to be in this community at this time. I'm a Minnesota native, so it's great to be in some fresh air.
Wonderful.
So I'm originally from Minnesota. I moved here in November, opened up in December. For those who don't know what naturopathic medicine is, essentially, I'm trained in primary care. My focus is the whole person, very patient-centered. We have kind of very unique relationships with our patients, and always looking for the underlying cause. So I have the primary care background and then additional training in things like regenerative medicine, IV nutrient therapy. As a relatively new business, this was a very interesting turn of events for us. But really our goal at this point is to stay connected to the community, to our patients, just to make sure that everyone knows that we're still here for them. And as things are opening up, it's starting to pick up again a little bit more. I think this has been a bit of a wake up to some people in terms of realizing how important our health is, especially in times like these. And the doctrines of naturopathic medicine, nutrition, movement, sleep, digestive health, social connections, all of these are pretty key in determining how healthy our system is and our health outcomes. So we really work with people to make a very individualized plan for them, whatever their goals may be. And it's great to be in such a health-oriented community. Everyone's pretty active up here, which is great. But I think we can kind of find comfort in the fact that we all can take some control in our health, and the health of those that maybe we care for, children, parents, things like that. A lot of us were going through life a little bit fatigued and run down, and we've gotten used to this different rhythm of life at the moment. But that really, to me, just signals that both our physical and our mental health are going to need to be resilient as we move forward. And there's a number of ways to do so. But I think that the biggest thing to think about is we hear a lot about these populations that are predisposed. They have underlying comorbidities that maybe make them more susceptible. And a lot of these are what I might consider things that could be modifiable with lifestyle factors. So, whether people are starting to think about a preventative standpoint or looking deeper into the underlying cause of what's going on, my job really is to help educate and empower and provide some resources for people in terms of taking care of our bodies and our minds in a more sustainable way. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that there's some changes that can be made in their lives moving forward that are going to benefit their overall health. We definitely have to adhere to the public health measures. These are really important when we talk about population health. But as a naturopath, the power and efficacy really lies in helping individuals. That's what makes up our community. So we each have our own unique responsibility moving forward here. And I think we can learn a lot from this time. This is a great opportunity to focus on our health, focus on what unites us. As Senator Daines was saying, I think Montanans are pretty amazing in their ability to work together even from a distance. All my patients are real people with real concerns and health barriers that all need to be addressed. And whether we're doing that through telemedicine or some essential in-office visits, we're here for our patients, we're here for the community, and just hope everyone can play a responsible role in all this.
Wonderful. Well, welcome to Big Sky. Anyone that's willing to open up a small business in Big Sky, I'll speak on behalf of all the other business owners. Welcome to the party. We all help each other out. So, maybe give us a couple examples of some of the common threads you've seen the last 8 weeks of either common things people are seeking advice from you on, or let's get into maybe showing a couple examples of things that you'd share with the audience of advice that you've recently been given or would give to people during these times.
Yeah, definitely. So my passion really lies in nutrition, which is something a lot of people have been talking about recently. I consider that to be our foundation for health. So whether we're taking supplements or medications or doing exercise and things on top of that, nutrition is really our foundation. We can't out-exercise a bad diet. We can't out-supplement poor nutrition. So it's definitely a place that I think a lot of us can focus on. And I think often it gets overcomplicated. So, just kind of taking an honest look at where we're at. Do we need to have some more fiber? Could we add some more healthy fats? Am I drinking enough water? That's a huge one. All of that's going to affect how well we sleep and our energy, our mental health. So a lot of things that people know, it's just kind of a matter of finding the steps to get there, which is something that we've been helping a lot of people with. There's a number of things probably bouncing around the media, various vitamins. In the wonderful state of Montana, a lot of us are going to need some vitamin D. We're sort of getting sunshine out now, so that's helpful. Vitamin C has been a big one. There's a frontline COVID task force that's doing IV vitamin C in conjunction with other things like the steroids, and finding good results with that. We do IV vitamins in office. It's something that has been pretty popular recently. I guess a couple others would be like zinc and selenium, just other immune boosters. You know, we can get a lot of these from our food, which is good news. So I'm always talking about nutrition. The other would be stress, is probably the biggest one that we're seeing, sleep and stress. This is a pretty big change for a lot of our routines and our reality. So, you know, whether that's having someone to talk to, whether that's reaching out and connecting with people, working on our relationships, that's another one that we've found as kind of a heavy focus in recent times.
No, absolutely. Well, once again, you look at it as having all the tools, right? Big Sky Medical Center plays its role in our health initiatives and upkeep, and having naturopath, more of a holistic approach like you're taking, is a really important tool. And a lot of them are under our own control with some good leadership and advice like you've given. You know, what's some other advice you'd give during these as it starts, you know, we're getting into the warmer months, you know, and hopefully getting away from the cold and flu season, you know, then this transitional time of year, is there a certain type of advice that you'd like to give people?
Yeah, so as we're moving into a warmer months, I think hydration becomes even more important. But I think we're also really blessed here. We can get fresh air, we can get outside, we can be active, and that goes a long way with our health. Those are probably the two biggest ones. And I think, you know, just kind of taking a look at where you're at. We're coming up on allergy season. That might be kind of scary for some of us. It's going to be a little bit of, do I have the virus? Do I have allergies? What's happening here? So again, there's a number of things that we can do in terms of how we're eating. Sugar and dairy are probably two really big ones when we start to talk about allergies, and digestive health. I just can't avoid digestive health. 70% of our immune system is in our digestive system. So that's a huge one to pay attention to. And a lot of people don't love talking about it, but it's really important in how our health, how robust our health response is in our immune system. So, you know, if you're curious and you have questions, it's always good to consult with somebody. And just kind of going back to Big Sky Medical Center, super appreciative of everything they do. And I just kind of wanted to hone in that I think that we can all work really well together, especially as part of a team. It's really important for patients to understand that you can work, you know, with both sides. You can have conventional care, and I'm happy, you know, we work together all the time. So I think it really benefits patients that we can have a team and a partnership, and the community, it benefits them as well.
Absolutely. I guess one last question for you, and then I'd let you kind of close out with some thoughts. Are you seeing patients right now? How are you doing that? And what's been kind of your COVID transition the past, you know, 7-8 weeks? And how are you looking moving into the next upcoming weeks?
Yeah. So right now what we're doing is probably about 50% telemedicine, and then some in office and a few house calls for people that we know are safe, quarantined, we feel comfortable with. Currently, I'm the only one in the office. I'm not allowing any other staff members to come in. And then we're screening patients before they're able to come in. We're encouraging people to call first, as necessary, doing in-office, in-person visits. But we're also here to connect with anyone over the phone, via telemedicine ways, and just working on the relationships. So moving forward for this week, we're going to kind of keep the same outline. We're spacing patients out about 30 minutes so we can sanitize, clean, trying to reduce contact between patients as well. And we're going to keep doing that for the time being, but we're here, we're open, we're seeing patients, and that includes weekends. So been doing some Saturdays and Sundays too, which is always fun. And yeah, we're here.
Located in Big Sky Town Center, Big Sky Natural Health. Once again, welcome to Big Sky. Kaley, any closing words of wisdom from the natural health expert of Big Sky?
Just great job to this community. Very impressed with everybody. I think we're super fortunate to have the leadership, the resources, the health that we do, and of course the scenery. So thank you so much for this, and just happy to be here and help support any way we can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us once again. All right, let's close out the last town hall. I'm gonna throw the baton over to Joe and let him close strong with he doesn't really need an introduction, but he's a legend in this community, and we're gonna have some fun with closing out this last town hall. So Joe, the stage is all yours.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, Eric. And thank you, Dr. Burns, for visiting us with us as well. Turning to more local talent, let's welcome our final panelist for the evening. He's a musician and an Eagles fan.
That's right.
And remains one of the many strings that holds this Big Sky community together. Welcome, Brian.
What up, Joe? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So I wanted to touch base with you first. You know, not only are you a talented musician, of course, but you're also a king. I'd love to hear a little about your time as royalty.
I don't remember a whole lot of it, but Dirtbag King 2014. You know, you guys keep talking about community, and that's just one of the many things that makes this town so fun and special is the Dirtbag tradition that will never die. I'm here to tell you. And, you know, the strength of the community has never been more evident than it has in the last month here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Dr. Burns talked a little about resilience from a health perspective. You know, how can music help aid in resiliency and healing?
Well, one thing that I've found is that, you know, bringing people together. You know, I've been doing these Sunday live streams, and just, people aren't coming to hear my music, and I'm well aware of that. People are coming together to socialize and to, you know, kind of relive the après-ski kind of experience where people are talking trash to one another and, you know, out of love. And the music is just a catalyst to bring people together, and to kind of piggyback on what Kaley was talking about is, you know, the positive mental health is such a big part of what keeps us going here. So I think music is a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, this free music online is, you know, on Facebook Live called Stumpy Sundays. And, you know, another component of that, you know, obviously community is a huge part of it. But for you personally, you know, tell us about this pivot from live music to this platform and what it's meant to you.
Well, it's a tricky one. A big part of playing music is the energy from the crowd and being with people and getting a response and getting it back and forth. You can do that a little bit with the chat room kind of thing, but only so much, and definitely not the energy to the extent that, you know, I would like it to be. So it's it's hard. It's been definitely a transition. Eric's been opening up these virtual town halls, talking about how you guys have had to pivot and do some different things, and we all do. And the music is the same way, trying to go about it in a different way, and thank God for technology. It's been a huge help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, your show last night, you know, was sort of getting back to a little of the traditional format of live music, you know, in front of a modest and social distancing crowd at Town Center Stage. Yeah. You know, but playing live music to crowds could, you know, very well be slow to return. How does a person who makes a living off performing adjust to this sort of new normal?
Well, first off, one of the saddest, you know, news, one of the saddest cancellations to come from this was Peak the Sky. I mean, Wilco and Slater Kinney were going to come here. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I was so psyched. I see, Eric, you're shaking your head. It's such a bummer, but what a great, man, that was awesome when you announced that lineup. We're going to be back. I know it's going to be back, and it's going to be great, but we were just so stoked about that. I mean, live music, to me, obviously, is so important, but it's just so many of my friends, and it's live music. There's nothing like it. It was weird yesterday to have people clap when I finished a song. It was like, whoa, I'm not used to that. But yesterday was special in that for one, getting to work with my songwriting partner, Lauren, who's just got an amazing voice, which I do not have. And then we wanted to do something outside and on a stage where we could be distanced because we didn't want to set a bad example. And we didn't invite anybody to come out. We didn't promote what we were trying to do, but we certainly weren't against people coming out as long as everyone kept their distance. And we knew in that big field out there that could happen, that people could come out and be separate. So I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad it was successful. And just to be on stage looking out and seeing some friends I hadn't seen in so long, it felt so good. So it's, we're working on, again, we're all pivoting. We're trying to make this work and we're finding ways to do it.
Yeah. Well, no, I think everyone's really appreciating it, and everyone is being forced into a complicated situation. Brian, you've been part of the Big Sky community for about 15 years now.
Right.
I'd love to hear, some community actions that have impressed you over the last, 7-8 weeks.
Oh, it's been incredible. It's been incredible. Man, so many people, and just I've been able to, and thanks mostly to social media, but just staying in touch with so many people, and we're all sharing ideas. We're all sharing, more than ever. Maybe not so much the political side, but on social media, so much is so much positivity, and it's almost like a lot of times I've seen social media at its very best recently, where people are staying in touch. They're checking in on each other. They're sending positive messages. And in this small town, it's even more so where we all know each other. We know what you're up to. We know your kids and what they're up to. And it's been so great. So many people have reached out and, offered meals and, food and all these other things that it's incredible. And I think if we all didn't communicate like we do, this town would be very different. It's so special. It's something that's so funny about this town is we're all so alike and we're all so different. And because I have friends from 21 to 50, and beyond in this town, and all from different backgrounds and with different occupations and goals and passions. And the skiing in the mountains is what brings us together, but we're all so different. And it's, we haven't lost that. We're all still communicating. We're all reaching out. We're all checking in on each other. And it's, my girlfriend Karen and I keep talking about how much we're just so lucky to be here, how much we love our friends. This town is special, and it's because of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just back to your music and your career right now. Anything you'd like to tell your fans out there, the community? Are there ways to help you out? You're playing Stumpy Sundays, each weekend, and those have been fantastic and gotten a lot of traction. And how can the community help out musicians that they love to hear but are not often able to hear live right now?
Look, if you're asking me what I want to say to people that have been tuning in, thank you. It's been unbelievable. Just how generous people have been, whether it's giving a Venmo, whether it's reaching out and offering dinner or leaving a snack on the doorstep, which has happened once or twice. It's I'm getting overwhelmed just thinking about it. People have been so unbelievably generous, and it's been fun to see how much music means to people on a huge scale, more than just Big Sky. People, so many live streams have been happening, and seeing a lot of people tuning in, a lot of people donating to the cause. It's a nice reminder how much the arts and music really matters to people. I know we were talking earlier about the new normal and what the silver linings of this whole thing. I know, Eric, you were saying, and we kind of get back to our roots and some of the things, for me, obviously music and the arts are so important, but I think it's important to everybody. And these last couple of weeks have really shown that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we really appreciate having you, Brian, and everybody's doing their part right now in the community. I just had one last quick question for you. You went to Penn State, and
that's right.
You're a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan.
That's right.
We asked Senator Daines this about the football season, but there's a bit of a twist.
Wait. You're not going to make me choose between Cat Grizz, are you?
Oh no.
Okay.
This is a little bit different.
I was about to sign off for a second.
Do you think the Eagles can stand a chance against my Washington Redskins?
The Redskins? Are you serious right now? You know, Joe, what I love about you is your sense of humor. You're so funny. I do want to say, I do want to take a second. I want to be so honest and serious right here for a second. Joe, I'm so happy you're here right now. And I mean that. For those of you that don't know, Joe did live here in Big Sky for a couple of years. And then like a dummy, he moved back to the East Coast. Now you and Emily are back. We're so happy you're here. I know you've been working your butt off. It's been great. You're a real journalist, and you've been busting your hump. And, you know, to give us the information that we need. Joe, I can't thank you enough for your hard work, man. Thank you.
Brian, thank you, man. It takes a whole community, and everybody's doing their part. And this is how we all get through it. So thank you.
That's right.
Some closing words for you all. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to our panelists, but first off, wanted to say thank you to our underwriters for this 5th session of the EBS Virtual Town Hall. First Security Bank and the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce. We couldn't make these happen without you, so thank you. Over the past 5 weeks, we've mentioned the word pivot relating to the COVID-19 pandemic on these town halls. You know, that Outlaw Partners and our publications have pivoted our platforms to include this town hall format based on our belief that you all deserve information and you deserve strong local journalism. We've pivoted in other ways too. In addition to our Explore Big Sky print publication, we've shifted our model to include daily digital news coverage on explorebigsky.com, and you can also sign up for our online app and our daily e-newsletter, the EBS Town Crier. Live at 5, Friday afternoon club streams live music on the EBS Facebook page every Friday, and we're still printing Mountain Outlaw and Explore Yellowstone magazines. If you have any news or information, email us at media@theoutlawpartners.com. And also, if you just want to talk, give us a call. I'm working in the office solo and could always use good conversation. But whether we're working remotely or in the same office, we've got a great squad here. Our reporters are working tirelessly to bring you what you need to know. And our entire Outlaw Partners team is stepping up and impressing us on a daily basis with their ingenuity and grit. And Big Sky, you're stepping up too. The community has come together in a whole new way. It's hard out there right now, but let's remember to back each other up. And as I've noticed a thread through this entire conversation, this town hall, I'll leave you with a few words from the late, great Chet Huntley. At the risk of sounding presumptuous, I would say to all of you, be patient and have courage, for there will be better and happier news one day if we work at it. Thank you all for watching. Let's send it back to Brian Stumph to close us out. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Thank you for that. That's great. Can you hear the guitar all right? Okay. Well, I close out a lot of my shows with what I call the greatest song ever written of all time. And for the most part, I believe that very strongly. So this is a tune from the Monty Python crew. It's called Always Look on the Bright Side of Life, which I encourage you all to do. Well, some things in life, they're bad. They can really make you mad. And other things just make you swear and curse. When you're chewing on life's gristle, don't grumble, give a whistle. And this'll help things turn out for the best. And always look on the bright side of life. And always look on the bright side of life. Now if life seems jolly rotten, there's something that you forgot, and that's to laugh and dance and smile and sing. When you're feeling down in the dumps, now don't be silly chumps, just purse your lips and whistle, that's the thing. And always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. 'Cause life is quite absurd. Now death's the final word. Let's always face the curtain with a bell. Forget about your scene, give the audience a grin. Enjoy it, it's your last chance of the hour. And always look on the bright side of life. And always look on the bright side of life. Now life's a piece of poop, but when you look at it, life's a laugh and death's a joke, it's true. You see, it's all a show. Keep them laughing as you go. Just remember that the last laugh is on you. And always look on the bright side of life. 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 Hey, thank you all so much for having me. Stay happy, stay healthy, everybody. Thank you so much. Hey, and we'll see you on Sunday. Go to Big Sky Live Music on Facebook. Follow along.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. We'll see you next time, next week, next Monday. Some great panelists. We have people from Lone Mountain Ranch joining us. Todd Wilkinson, amazing journalist, will be joining us next week. Amazing. We got representatives from the Hungry Moose joining us next week. So we'll have a great panel next week. Thanks again to everyone that joined us this week. And a special thanks to the Senator for being so generous with his time, and Northwestern Energy. You are the veins that keep us rolling. And Kaley, great advice. Let's take care of ourselves and our mind and always look on the bright side of life. Have a great night, everybody.